Well, you're still listening to our special elections coverage here on Kaya 959 with myself, Kukule Tumfupi, and Pimelo Mutene. We are coming to you live from the Results Operations Center here at Gallagher Estate in Midrand.
That's right.
An eventful evening it's been so far.
It has been, and you can hear when you listen to the commissioners, you know, they've had to be answering questions they've been answering for the past 24 hours at least, and it's starting to get them tired. You can already start hearing the fatigue set in. They're saying, look, we're still busy. We're still busy with the counting, so it's not over until it's over. And of course, people are eager, and they're eager to hear the final results. And you heard our Peter Mulmani, they're saying, when are you going to finish? Well, they'll finish when they finish. They've got 7 days to complete the process. So, but you can already hear that the pressure is on, and it's quite tense at the moment.
And this is something you had mentioned just last night, a good 24 hours ago, when we commented on the fatigue and the anxiety that actually might impact the outcomes of the results. But let's talk about some of these results. Speaking to a party representative of the UDM, who's going to give us some perspective of their performance, Nqabayomzi Kwankwa, who joins us now to give us some more details on your experience. Tata,
Yes, Ndongsis.
how are you feeling?
Very well, and you?
That's a delight to hear, because many of your peers and colleagues have been living on very minimal sleep. So
Same here. Same here.
You're still up, though. You still look quite fresh. How are you keeping yourself up?
Well, I have to keep on feeding information to party structure, so I have no choice. Duty calls.
That leaderboard, how are you feeling about your results so far?
No, the results could most certainly be better, but I think we find solace in one fact, knowing that the results from some of our regions where we're the strongest have not come true yet.
Yes.
This reflects growth in some parts of the Eastern Cape where in the past we did not get enough votes. But now you're all hoping and praying that your base actually did come out in numbers to vote for you in order for that picture to change in couple of hours from now. So we're still very optimistic, because we know that we got as many of our people to go out and vote for us. It's just a matter of those results being reflected on the board.
What's your target?
Our target initially before the elections, we're looking at 500,000 votes. But now if you look at the fact that we've counted, we're almost at 40%.
55%, I believe.
55%, right? We're almost at 55%. It looks like a bridge too far to cross.
Yes.
We are thinking that we should be able to get at least half of that, which will reflect growth from where we're sitting.
Speaking of this growth, though, some of your peers and counterparts in the political arena have grown significantly themselves, and I'm keen to get your views on how we see the likes of MK
only
performing.
party that has grown exponentially in this, there was no growth, in fact, that has done exceptionally well is MK.
party.
And all the other parties have taken a bit of a beating, especially those that were number 5, number 6, up until where we are. I think we've managed to hold our fort in terms of we were comparing in the morning where we were standing on day 1 in the morning in 2019 and where we were right day 1 in the morning around 10 o'clock, and we saw that there was a marginal improvement. All that we need is for the votes and the results to keep on trickling in so that the picture can change. But I think some of the parties like Good, I'm not an analyst, I'm not a political analyst.
Sure.
But you'll see, it's clear to see that Patriotic Alliance has taken some of the support away from Good.
Big
It's
jump
also
there.
easy to see or pick up that MK did not only affect the African National Congress, to some extent it has also affected the support base of the EFF. And if you consider that they've also made inroads into the Eastern Cape, they've eaten into our support base, including that of ATN. But it's a political context. It happens that way sometimes.
I mean, obviously, we don't have the final results, but what could have made your results better?
No, I think we should have probably launched our campaign and focused on the Eastern Cape 6 months ago. Like, for example, made it clear to everyone that the general was the premier candidate for the Eastern Cape. Because when you do analyze the results per region, which is what we've been doing, looking at the regions which have actually posted results on the system, there's growth across the regions, everywhere. Now, we want to see that growth in our Tambo region, Amatola region, Buffalo City municipality. Then as soon as we see that, then the picture is going to change. So that's what we're keeping an eye on the picture. But also, if Gauteng could also grow marginally as soon as we come to the townships. The city of Cape Town, for an example, the results are not in for the city of Cape Town, where there's Langa, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu. So once those results start coming in, the picture for us is going to change for the better.
General Holomisa was quite unhappy with the media earlier on this week, saying, look, you don't believe as UDM you were well covered. You feel that there were other political parties that were more favored than others. You want to expand on that?
Well, yes. But I think what we did well in these elections, we did not rely on the media or other people to tell our story. We generated our own content, shared it on social networks, shared it with our own electorate, rather with our constituency, for them to actually propagate it and send it to other people. But yes, indeed, we would have liked to get more coverage during the campaign period, but it was not to be. I suppose it's because of the number of political parties as well that were contested for this election. So it must not have been easy, could not have been easy for the media to be able to give everyone airtime. But I think we're grateful with some of the coverage we received from some of the media houses, because it was not a complete blackout.
Speaking of the general, I believe he was able to submit his vote, if I'm not mistaken, despite the discrepancies we saw with the IEC. But this does bring to the fore some of the challenges, or I guess concerns you might raise around the operational activity regarding the IEC this past election.
Well, to the IEC's defense, it's the first time that they've had to run such a big election where you have regional, you have to focus on regional candidates, you have independent candidates, and so on. So naturally, from an operational and a logistical point of view, they were going to experience certain challenges. I think from where we're sitting, we wanted to see them attempting to resolve some of the problems. I even mentioned elsewhere that at my voting station, when we couldn't vote for 3 hours because the VMD wasn't working. And when it started working, it would all work for a few minutes, 5 minutes, and be offline again. And that caused the queue to be long. But later on, when it started working around 10 o'clock, the queue started moving faster. So you have those challenges, obviously. Some of them are teething problems because this VMD system was not used in 2019. I don't think enough testing on it was done before they went live with it. But it's good that I think it was not a widespread problem, right? You could sample the VDs or voting districts that were affected a great deal by the number of queues that were, the long queues that they had, and the number of challenges they kept on reporting back to us.
So I know that you've spoken a lot about regions and waiting for your base to show up in the regions. But to be quite honest, I mean, the UDM has been quite vocal in Parliament. We haven't missed you. In other words, we've really seen your voice come through. How many seats are you gunning for there in Parliament?
No, remember, with about 500 seats, 500,000 votes, we're looking at about 10 seats realistically, trying to look at a good voter turnout threshold. As you have seen, the voter turnout has been good, but we still need to determine the final figure because we don't know how many people ended up giving up because of the long queues and decided not to vote, especially in areas such as Mthatha, where there was violence immediately before the elections, in other areas where there were technical issues that the IEC experienced. So we're looking at 10 seats. But realistically speaking, from where we're sitting, I think 5 or 4 seats would be where we're actually going to land. But I think what's important for us is that we need to now then build on the base that we've created. We need to build on the support that we've actually managed to garner over these elections and on the growth that we've managed to get from the different regions around the Eastern Cape.
How concerned are you about voter education? There just seem to be a lot of people who are not clear about certain things, not only about the 3 ballots, which is one point, but just not that they can show up anywhere and that they feel that they were unfairly treated, they were turned away when legitimately the IEC had to stick to the rules, but people were not necessarily clear about that. Did you get a lot of those complaints?
Yes, and we blame the IEC for that because voter education is part and parcel of their responsibility. We also do it, but remember...
As well as all of us.
Yeah. But it is their primary responsibility, especially when they knew they were running such a complex election, right? Electoral process that voters had to understand. It's not enough to run a few adverts on TV, right? They should have been out in the communities explaining what the process is going to be, explaining everything, because I think they just sit here and then just run a few adverts and they think they are conducting voter education. They also cannot outsource that responsibility to political parties, because political parties will only focus on their constituencies rather than focusing on the general public, because we don't have the resources to be able to cover the whole of South Africa.
I do want to build up on a point that you mentioned on earlier, not only aligned to voter education, but growth. As we make our way to 2026 and many years beyond in terms of elections. What does that look like for the UDM? If there's anything we've learned from this election is that the electorate is shifting, is changing, is open to exercising their choice, and is representative of a wide variety of our demographics. So what does that growth look like?
And it speaks to the vibrance of our democracy, which is great for the growth and the development of our democracy. But the second issue for us, I think, the strategy of focusing, not stretching our resources too thin. I was looking at some of the provinces where we registered to contest elections.
You're thinking you shouldn't have bothered?
We shouldn't have bothered, really. In other words, it means that we need to focus. If next time we can focus on 2, 3, 4 provinces, and when it comes to municipalities, yes, registered nationally, but target one municipality. Say, for example, for hypothetically speaking, we're to say in 2026, we're going to focus on trying to win KSD away from the ANC and Buffalo City Municipality away from the ANC, and then leave the rest to chance.
In your campaign, what were your biggest challenges?
The biggest challenges have always been with the resources. Remember, we don't get a lot of private funding because we're a center-left political party, right? So private donors won't come to us. We're not spewing neoliberal nonsense like other parties. We are also not a proxy of any business person or any stakeholder. So we speak our mind. We're an independent organization. And people don't like that generally. And obviously because the size of the party, the numbers, the amount of resources you receive from the IEC. Remember, when you're competing with big political parties that have deep pockets, one of the things, for example, the Democratic Alliance, I'm not bashing the DA here, but the DA can call a person a volunteer, but they still pay a stipend. We can't afford those things, for example. So you can't compete generally. So it means you have to rely on your own human resource to be able to get things done, and which is very limited.
What's that journey been like, getting individuals to volunteer, to trust the UDM, so much so that they're also willing to share that messaging with us as the electorate?
What is that? I didn't get that.
What's that journey been like to make sure that you do have enough representatives within the UDM to actively do the work of the party?
Well, the journey, we have to continue from where we left off. I think at times in South Africa, because of resource constraints, we tend to operate like election machinery when it comes to political parties, where we're very visible in communities around elections, and we're not as visible as we should be in between elections. And that is the weakness of most political parties, including my own. And I think we need to start making sure that the communities where we did a lot of work over the past couple of months or so, we continue to service them until the local government elections and the next elections. That's the only way we're going to get growth.
Is it sustainable?
Optics don't work in politics. They work in America or in the West.
Is it sustainable? I mean, you've just spoken about resources, so that's a tight balance there.
No. You have to plan that.
Yeah.
Remember, there was a culture of volunteering in the past in a number of political parties. That's how the UDM was established in the first place. There were no public representatives, but people were committed to a cause. We need to go back to the drawing board and try and find a way of getting people who are, for example, the Eastern Cape, who are committed to improving the situation there, to commit to a particular cause, and then we start pulling together and working together. And I'm sure if we can get a team or a group of committed individuals, other civil society organizations might join in with their resources and help us, as long as we're making a material improvement in the conditions and the lives of our people. One of the things I hate with passion, for example, is state-owned politics. There's a lot of money that we waste in rallies as political parties. I mean, you spend millions.
You were there as well at the stadium?
No, I'm saying I'm not a fan of it, obviously, but it's part and parcel of the program of the party. But we do less rallies than other political parties do. They spend millions of rands, which we could be using elsewhere, trying to make a difference in people's lives. Build an RDP house for 1 or 2 people, invest in school or whatever, bursary programs for kids.
We engaged with your manifesto, but when you were on the ground, what were you hearing? As you said, I mean, you often, campaign, but more vigorously during an election time. So what were you hearing when you were on the ground?
It's general service delivery issues. Like in the province, the Eastern Cape, the service delivery machinery has completely collapsed. And in other rural provinces, for example, when you go to Limpopo. But because...
And you know what's unfortunate about that? On social media, people actually have extended jokes to basically say there'll be consistent investigations by some of our peers in the media looking at the financial malfeasance, lack of service delivery, corruption that will take place. And I think that we can't have that narrative being maintained within the Eastern Cape and other provinces. So clearly it really does speak to a major
we're still in the Mandela shadow. You need to step out of the Nelson Mandela shadow in the Eastern Cape in particular. I mean, for example, when it comes to my own area, Raymond Mhlaba, whenever they have issues with mobile clinics, I'm there. Roads, I'm there. whatever challenges the community experiences, but come election time, they will always vote for their ANC. And even if you're standing outside the voting station trying to check on the voters roll whether their names are there, you're trying to remind them, very subtly to say, I'm here. No, they will greet you, but they will go in and vote for the ANC and then come back the next day and complain about the very same ANC. So it's going to take a lot of hard work before we can get out of that.
I'm keen, just before we let you go, to get your thoughts on Parliament. You've been an MP for a while, and you actively participating in what now feels like this metamorphosis, this change in what Parliament will look like, where it takes a lot of camaraderie, a lot of partnership, but also strong debate amongst various political parties. How critical is this for us as South Africans? What's your experience been, and I guess your observations as to what this new dawn of Parliament could look like?
It's a watershed moment for the ANC, an exciting time for South Africa, but it requires political maturity on the part of these political leaders so that we do not see the chaos, because this country is going to be run by a coalition government after these elections. That much is clear, right? But what we require is maturity so that we put the interests of South Africans first and above all our narrow parties and interests, so that we don't see a repeat of what's happening at local government level, happening at national level. I mean, no country will take us seriously if by the time this term ends, you have 5 or 6 people who are former presidents.
Do you then support the idea of a threshold to manage, the governance of coalitions, especially at national level?
No, it was the ANC talking nonsense as usual.
It was the ANC and the DA. Yes.
They're not being scientific. Why am I saying that? They were scapegoating smaller parties because they were saying indirectly that the reason why we have chaos at local government level is because there are no thresholds. So the smaller parties were a problem, and yet the fights at these local government municipalities are between these largest political parties. So it required a different kind of discussion. It required us to try and develop models that would work for South Africa, and we provided to the table scientific examples of how other countries are doing it. We provided an example about Kenya, including issues of making sure that a coalition agreement is binding for 2.5 years and that we make it legal. If you sign, you are in. You can only exit after 2 years if you want, to create stability, sense of stability in the service delivery machinery, so that we focus on the work that needs to be done. So there are various models around the world that we can use for it. But the ANC did not want to listen to that, partly because they thought they were not going to lose power, but the results are saying the opposite. And we encouraged not only the African National Congress, but even the Democratic Alliance, and said, let's have these pre-coalition discussions long before elections. We trash our issues and differences out. We decide what common agendas or common issues of common interest we're going to agree on, develop that blueprint long before elections. Look at it now.
So have you been in those conversations?
But you were having conversations and you still didn't want to be in the multi-party charter.
No, that's something else.
That's what they see the multi-party charter as that
resolution of the DA. It's a Congress. We have a forum of opposition parties, which was established a long time ago.
I see.
The DA left at the table where we're discussing these issues, decided to grandstand, go to its elective Congress, talk about a multi-party charter, decide the conditions of how that was going to work in an electoral Congress of the DA. We are not a satellite branch of any political party for any party to think they can tell us what to do.
So, in what context then were you having those conversations? Because they were not going to.
No, they
definitely were not going to.
No,
have that
we started the conversation. Can I tell you how long ago this discussion was started by the UDM? In 2009. I was still a support staff member. I was still a researcher and speechwriter of the General. I was the secretariat. I was part of the secretariat of the Forum of Opposition Parties when Congress of the People did well. COPE submitted a proposal, and other parties submitted proposals about, because we were already trying to prepare South Africa. We knew this was going to happen at some point. We did not want the political parties, not even the sister opposition parties, the political parties in South Africa to be caught with their pants down by the time that happened, because we said at some point the electorate is going to force us to work together.
So the ANC didn't want to have a conversation?
No, they had a conversation, the national dialogue, but they had it in bad faith. Remember what happened is that they called us to a dialogue in Cape Town. They didn't disclose to us that long before they actually called for that dialogue, they had already introduced a bill right, in the Home Affairs Department, talking about thresholds and all the other nonsense that they wanted to be reflected in the coalition agreement or blueprint for coalition government. That's how that whole thing collapsed. We only covered that while we're discussing the issue and debating the issue that were there.
So seriously, then now, who would you like to have a conversation with?
Everyone, including the ANC.
And the MK party?
No, of course. The MK is the controversies where is a sister opposition party. I indicated elsewhere that the general and the former president, Zuma, have been comparing notes, sharing intelligence about elections, how to work together, getting involved in forecasting the future, and what kind of model would work for a coalition government. And those discussions and details will be, I'm sure, shared with the public in due course.
Such a pleasure speaking to you, bringing about different aspects to the conversation this evening, Nqabayomzi. All the best. Get some rest. We look forward to tallying up the final numbers and seeing what we see in terms of outcomes this coming Sunday.
Thank
you for coming.
Thank you kindly.